My name is Matthew, and for as long as I can remember, I was called to save lives. Being a paramedic was never just a job to me. It was my purpose. I had seen people at their most desperate, caught between life and death, moments away from eternity, and I had spent years doing everything in my power to pull them back. Some days, it drained me. The long hours, the high-stakes calls, the weight of knowing that at any moment, someone's fate could rest in my hands. But no matter how hard it got, I held on to one truth. I was making a difference. I had lost count of how many times I fought to keep a heart beating, how many hands I held as someone slipped away, how many families I stood beside when the unthinkable happened. Yet no matter how many times I faced it, death was never easy, and there was always a question lurking in the back of my mind. Why did some survive and others didn't? I had seen it all. People defying the odds, clawing their way back from the brink when every medical reason said they shouldn't, and I had seen others slip away even when we did everything right. I believed in God. I always had, but I didn't always understand Him. I never questioned His existence. That was never the issue. What I questioned was how He decided. Did He reach down and pull some back while letting others go? Or was it all just random? I tried not to dwell on it, told myself it wasn't my place to understand. My job was to fight for every life, to do my part, and to accept that the outcome was beyond my control. But I never imagined that one day I would be the one lying on the edge of life and death. It started like any other shift, a normal night, a routine call. The radio crackled, dispatch coming through, an accident, intersection, multiple vehicles involved. We had answered calls like this 100 times before. Sirens blared as we sped through the streets. The adrenaline kicked in, that familiar rush. That came every time we raced against the clock. I sat in the passenger seat, mentally running through protocols. Stabilize, assess vitals, stop the bleeding, move fast. My partner gripped the wheel, eyes locked on the road, navigating through traffic. We were almost there, just a few more blocks. Then, in a single brutal instant, everything changed. Blinding headlights, rushing toward us from the side. No time to react, no time to think. The impact was violent. Metal crunched against metal, a deafening explosion of sound. The ambulance lurched, thrown into chaos. I felt my body whipped forward, then sideways, as the world spun out of control. For a split second, there was weightlessness. Then, everything came crashing down, a crushing force, pinning me in place. A pain so intense, it stole my breath away. And then, nothing. Darkness swallowed me whole. I don't know how long I was gone. Seconds, minutes, maybe more. But when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the ambulance anymore. At first I thought I was dreaming. I was standing, yet I felt no pain, no injuries, no weight pressing down on me. The wreckage, the flashing lights, the chaos of the accident, it was all there, but distant, far away. Then I turned, and my breath caught in my throat, because I was looking at myself, my body, still inside the ambulance, broken, motionless. My partner was shouting my name, shaking me, desperate. I should have panicked. I should have felt fear. But instead, I felt peace. A peace so deep, so absolute, that it didn't make sense. And in that moment, I knew the truth. I was dead, but this was only the beginning. I felt weightless, as if I was floating, no longer bound by the limitations of my body. The pain, the heaviness, the struggle to breathe, it was all gone. I should have been afraid. I should have been desperate to get back to my body, but I wasn't. There was no fear, no struggle, only a quiet knowing that something beyond my understanding was happening. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Then, everything changed. A light appeared, not above me, not around me, but everywhere. It wasn't blinding or harsh. It was soft, alive. It didn't just shine. It called to me, not with words, but with something deeper, something undeniable. The longer I looked at it, the more I felt it. A warmth unlike anything I had ever known. A love so pure that it made everything else fade away. And in that moment, I understood. I was supposed to go toward it, not because I was forced, but because I belonged there. I had always belonged there. I just hadn't realized it until now. As I moved toward the light, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just a journey. It was a return, a homecoming to a place I had somehow forgotten, but had always been meant for. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. Every part of me knew this was where I was supposed to be. The farther I drifted from my body, the more I felt it. A love so deep, so consuming, that it made everything I had ever experienced on earth seem pale in comparison. Then, I wasn't alone. A presence emerged from the light. Not just any presence. I knew instantly who it was. Jesus. There were no introductions, no need for words. The moment I saw him, I knew that every thought I had ever had about him, every image, every sermon, every idea, was nothing compared to the reality. He was more powerful than I could have ever imagined. Yet, at the same time, he radiated love so overwhelming that it broke me. There was no fear, no judgment, no distance between us, only love, a love that saw me, that knew me, that had been waiting for me since the beginning of time. As he stood before me, I felt the weight of my entire life, every moment, every action, every doubt, exposed. I should have felt ashamed, vulnerable in my imperfections, but I didn't. There was no condemnation in his gaze, no anger, no disappointment, only love. A love that shattered every fear, every insecurity, every question I had carried. And in that moment, I knew that all my doubts about life, about death, about God's plan, were irrelevant now. This was the truth, and it was more than I had ever understood. I wanted to speak, to tell him how much I believed in him, how hard I had tried to live a good life, how I had struggled with my faith at times. But before I could say a word, he spoke first. "There is something I need to show you." The moment he said it, I felt a shift. The light around me didn't fade, but it began to move. I wasn't just standing there anymore. I was being carried, taken somewhere beyond my comprehension, and I knew whatever he was about to reveal to me would change everything. As he reached out his hand, I felt something shift in the air. It was as if the world around me, the peace, the light, the love, was all preparing me for what was to come. When his hand touched mine, I felt an overwhelming wave of connection. It wasn't just a touch. It was as if our souls merged. The light around us intensified, but instead of blinding me, it opened my eyes. I could see it all, not just the world I had known, but something deeper. Jesus was showing me the truth about the world, not as it seemed, but as it truly was. And what I saw was nothing like I expected. I saw people everywhere, walking, talking, living, but their focus was not on what truly mattered. They were lost in distractions, chasing after things that didn't last. Money, success, approval. They were moving so fast, as if nothing beyond their daily routines existed. Some were consumed by their careers, thinking they had all the time in the world. Others, drowned in entertainment, social media, gossip. None of them were thinking about eternity. None of them were seeking God. Then, I saw something that shook me to my core. Churches. Some were grand, filled with people. Others, small and humble. At first glance, it seemed like worship was happening. Prayers were being said. People were giving their attention to God. But as I looked deeper, I saw the truth. Many of the hearts in those churches were far from God. Their lips moved in prayer, but their minds were elsewhere. Their eyes glazed over during sermons, not listening to the truth. Some attended out of habit, going through the motions. Others were only there for appearances, so others would think they were good people. But the moment they left, they returned to lives that ignored God. I saw some pastors, leaders who were meant to guide others, but they had lost sight of their true purpose. Some were more focused on building their own influence than on growing their people's faith. Others watered down the gospel, telling people what they wanted to hear rather than what they needed to hear. And amidst all of this, there were still a few who were genuine, whose hearts were truly devoted to God, but they were fewer than I had hoped. Jesus stood beside me, watching everything unfold. His eyes were full of love, but there was also sorrow in them. Then he spoke, and his words hit me with the weight of truth. "They believe they have time, but they do not seek me." The moment he said it, I understood. People think they have control over their lives. They think they can push God aside until they're ready, until it's more convenient. But I had seen how quickly life could be taken away. I had held the hands of countless people who never thought that day would be their last. They thought they had more time, but time is never promised. I thought about my own life, the prayers I had said, the good I had tried to do. But had I truly given God everything? Had I truly sought Him with my whole heart? Or had I just gone through the motions, the way so many others had? I had spent my life saving people physically, but had I ever stopped to think about saving them spiritually? Had I ever told them that what came after this life was what truly mattered? Had I truly pointed them to Jesus? I had believed in God. I had prayed when I needed strength, but I had also been distracted, caught up in my own responsibilities, my routines, my plans. And now, standing beside Jesus, seeing the world as He saw it, I realized how much people were missing. It wasn't just about going to church. It wasn't just about saying the right things. It wasn't about checking off religious boxes without truly surrendering to God. It was about seeking Him. It was about living for Him every day. For the first time, I understood that faith wasn't something to delay. It wasn't something to do when it's convenient. It was something to live right now. I looked at Jesus, and I saw something in His eyes that broke me even more. He wasn't angry. He wasn't disappointed. He was heartbroken because He loved every single person, and so many of them didn't even realize how much they needed Him. I turned to Him, my voice trembling. "Lord, what happens to them?" He looked at me, and although there was sadness in His expression, there was also hope. "That is why I brought you here," He said. "There is still time, but they must choose me." And in that moment, I knew whatever Jesus was about to show me next would change everything. As I stood beside Him, watching the world continue on, unaware of the truth, a sense of urgency began to press down on me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't regret. It was the weight of knowing that people had to wake up before it was too late. Jesus turned to me, His eyes full of love and sorrow, and for the first time, I truly understood that believing in God wasn't enough. It had never been enough. I had spent my life acknowledging God's existence, saying prayers when I needed strength, trying to be a good person. But had I truly followed Him? Had I sought Him in every moment? Or had I lived my life on autopilot? Had I assumed that because I wasn't doing anything wrong, I must be doing enough? Jesus didn't wait for me to speak. He already knew my thoughts. "It is not enough to believe," He said. "They must follow me." The words hit me like a tidal wave, crashing through everything I thought I knew about faith. I saw a vision then, a man telling himself he would get serious about his faith later, but his later never came. I saw a woman, focused only on her career, promising herself she would make time for God, but that time never arrived. I saw entire families, too busy, too distracted, too caught up in their daily lives to realize the most important thing had been missing. And then, I saw myself. I saw all the years I had spent saving lives physically, but never once stopped to think if I had done enough to save them spiritually. I had rescued people from accidents, from heart attacks, from overdoses, from disasters, but had I ever shared with them that their eternal life mattered more than anything? Had I ever told them that without Jesus they had no hope beyond this world? The weight of it all crushed me. How many opportunities had I missed? How many people had I helped, only to send them back into the world without making sure they knew the truth? Jesus' voice broke through my thoughts, calm but firm. They must stop delaying their faith. They must live for me now. His words settled deep within me, as if He were speaking directly to my soul. And in that moment I understood. It wasn't just about telling people the truth. It wasn't just about speaking the right words. It was about living out that truth every single day. Not waiting for the perfect moment, not waiting for things to be easier, but choosing God in every moment. I had been given a second chance, a rare opportunity that most people would never get. And with that opportunity came a responsibility. I could no longer turn away from what I had seen. I couldn't forget the urgency of the message, the truth about heaven, the call to follow Jesus. Right now, not later. I looked at the people in heaven, those who had truly given their hearts to God, and I knew I had to go back. I had to tell them. Jesus looked at me, His expression tender yet firm. "You must go back," He said. I knew what He was asking me to do. My soul was torn between the peace of heaven and the responsibility He had just placed on me. I took a deep breath, though I had no lungs to fill in this place, and with everything I had, I whispered, "I will go." The moment I said it, The light around me shifted again, and I felt myself being pulled away, away from the perfection of this place, away from the peace I had never known before I could even process what was happening, before I could take one last moment to memorize the beauty and love surrounding me. I was gone. A sudden jolt ran through my body. Like waking up from the deepest sleep, the world around me felt heavy, too loud, too painful. I gasped for air, my chest rising violently, as if I hadn't breathed in forever. The weight of my body returned, every ache, every sensation, reminding me that I was back. The sounds around me were chaotic, voices shouting, machines beeping, footsteps rushing. I could barely process what was happening. But then I heard someone say, "He's back. Oh my God, he's back." I opened my eyes, blinking against the harsh, fluorescent hospital lights. The world felt dense, too heavy, as if gravity had intensified, like I was being pulled back into something I no longer belonged to. My limbs were heavy, my head throbbed, but there was something even heavier inside me, the knowledge of where I had just been. A doctor leaned over me, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. "You had no pulse," he said, still struggling to understand. "We tried everything, but you were gone, and now you're breathing. Your heart is beating, like nothing ever happened." They called it a miracle, but I knew it wasn't just a miracle. I knew exactly what had happened. The days that followed were a blur. Doctors ran tests, unable to explain how I had come back. My body was battered from the crash, but I was alive. The medical explanations didn't matter to me. What mattered was the message. I had been shown the truth. I had seen heaven. I had stood before Jesus, and I had been given a responsibility to share the truth I had learned. I had to tell people what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me. At first, I told my family. I sat them down, my hands still trembling, my voice hoarse from the experience. I told them everything: the crash, the moment I left my body, the presence of Jesus, the vision of the world, the warning, the urgency of faith, the choice he had given me. I watched their faces as I spoke, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Some of them cried, overwhelmed by the truth I shared. My mother clutched my hands tightly, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "I believe you." My sister sobbed quietly, shaking her head in disbelief, saying she had always felt something was missing in her faith, but never knew what. But not everyone believed me. I saw the hesitation in my brother's eyes, the way he avoided my gaze, the way he forced a polite smile and said, "Maybe it was just a dream. You went through a traumatic experience. The brain does strange things when it's under stress." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. I knew the truth. I told my coworkers next, the ones who had seen death up close, just like I had. They had spent years with me, pulling people from wreckage, restarting stopped hearts, delivering the worst news to families. And yet, they had never seen what I had seen. So when I told them what happened to me, some listened carefully, nodding slowly, as if something deep within them resonated with my words. One of them, a man I had worked with for nearly a decade, broke down in front of me. Tears streamed down his face as he confessed, "I've been struggling with my faith for years. Hearing your story made me realize I need to get right with God," but others dismissed it. "Sounds like oxygen deprivation to the brain," one of them said, shrugging as he took a sip of his coffee. Near-death experiences are common. People see what they expect to see. I had expected that reaction, but I didn't stop sharing. I went to my church. I stood in front of the congregation, and I told them everything. I shared my experience, the crash, the light, the truth I had seen. I told them faith wasn't just about believing. It was about truly following Jesus, seeking him now, not waiting for the perfect moment that might never come. Some sat in complete silence, eyes fixed on me, their expressions unreadable. Some were moved to tears, heads bowed, hands gripping the edges of their pews. Then there were those who couldn't accept it. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering among themselves, convinced I had just been hallucinating. They didn't want to hear the truth. They couldn't wrap their minds around it. But I didn't stop sharing, because I knew the truth now. I had seen what awaited those who truly gave their hearts to God, those who didn't just claim faith, but lived it. I had also seen those who wasted their time, thinking they had years to figure things out, only to realize too late that life was never guaranteed. Jesus had sent me back for a reason. I wasn't here to convince everyone. I wasn't here to argue with those who refused to believe. I was here to tell them what I had seen, what I had learned, what Jesus had shown me. I had been given a second chance, something most people will never receive, and I was going to use it. As I sit here now, back in the world I once knew, I carry a burden that I never expected. It's not a burden of pain or suffering, but of truth, a truth so deep, so undeniable, that I cannot ignore it. I was given a second chance, a rare opportunity that most people will never get, and with that opportunity comes a responsibility. I cannot turn away from what I saw. I cannot forget the urgency of the message, the truth about heaven, the call to follow Jesus now, not later. I saw the reality of how many people are lost, not because they outright reject God, but because they believe they have time. They think faith can wait, that they can pursue it later, when it's more convenient, when they have finished chasing their own plans. But time is never promised. I saw how quickly life can be taken, how unexpected death is, how many people step out of their homes in the morning, thinking they will return, only for their lives to end in an instant. I was one of them. I didn't know that my life would change that night, that my heart would stop, that I would find myself standing before Jesus, being shown the truth about what truly matters. But you don't need to wait for a near-death experience to wake up. You don't need to go through what I did to realize that Jesus is calling you right now. He is not asking for part of you, for the moments when it's convenient, for the leftovers of your time and attention. He is asking for your whole heart. He is asking you to follow him now, to seek him now, to stop making excuses and truly live the life he created you for. Because one day, you will stand before him, just as I did, and in that moment, the only thing that will matter is whether you truly knew him, whether you gave him everything, whether you followed him fully, not just in name, but in the way you lived. So I urge you, if this message has stirred something in you, do not ignore it. Do not push it aside, and promise yourself that you'll think about it later. Later is never guaranteed. Seek God now. Live for him now. Make sure that when your time comes, whenever that may be, you are ready, because I promise you, nothing else will matter in that moment. Thank you for watching. If this testimony spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe, so that more people can hear this truth and wake up before it's too late. I can't stress enough, time is a gift. Every second you have is a chance to live fully for God, a chance to stop letting distractions take over, a chance to let go of the lies that keep you from truly following him. If you don't know Jesus, if you've never surrendered your heart to him, this is the moment. I can't stress enough, time is a gift. Every second you have is a chance to live fully for God, a chance to stop letting distractions take over, a chance to let go of the lies that keep you from truly following him. If you don't know Jesus, if you've never surrendered your heart to him, this is the moment. Don't wait for a perfect time. Don't wait for some future moment that might never come. Seek him now. Give him your heart now, because he is waiting for you.